County Commissioners for Custer County meeting will come to order. Let the record show today is May 16th. It is 9 o'clock. We are meeting in Wetmore at the Community Center. I want to welcome everybody. Dallas, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And if you would bear with me, I would like to exercise the chair's right to ask for a moment of silence this morning. We lost a young member of our community last night in a car wreck, Jake Schultz, who I happened to have had when I was teaching in school, and know his parents, of course, Don and Ellen Wilcox. So if you don't mind, if you join with me in just a moment of silence, please. Thank you, folks. I appreciate that. I know all of our hearts go out to our Sheriff's Department and the coroner. Of course, the members of his family who actually were on scene last night, and it was just not a good situation. So, appreciate that. And let's hold those members of that family in our prayers. It's got to be a tough time for them. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Flower?
Present.
Commissioner Kanda?
Here.
Commissioner Prince?
Present.
Attorney Clint Smith?
Present.
And Clerk to the Board Kelly Camper present.
Thank you, ma'am. Gentlemen, do you have any amendments to the agenda?
I do not.
Okay. Commissioner Kanda?
No, none here.
Nor do I. Yes, ma'am.
Do we want to talk about the fire ban? I don't know if you got the text.
Well, that way I thought we were going to do when we had a chance here. The new business updates.
Yeah, we probably should add that to the agenda. Thank you, ma'am.
Today's day 25, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's add that to the new business.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Commissioner Prince, you okay with that?
I'm fine with this.
Commissioner Kanda?
You bet.
Thank you. Audience introduction.
Brenda Gady, Assistant to the Board.
Linda Anderson.
Dallas Anderson, Custer County Airport Board.
I'm Paul Crispin. I'm District Ranger with U.S. Forest Service.
Shannon Brother, sure.
Nancy Cruz, Wetmore.
Peggy Martin Wetmore.
John Spar Whitmore.
Bruce Barr, Wetmore.
Lauren Gray, Wetmore.
You'd swear we're in Wetmore, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, you would think so. Thank you, folks, for being here. We appreciate that. Thank you for setting up some refreshments and treat us better than we deserve. Thank you. Approval of the minutes of April 30th.
I move we approve them,
Okay.
both first and second,
I'll
30th.
second that motion. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 30th, May 1st, and May 2nd. Discussion?
Good
Hearing
job.
none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Let the record show that the minutes are approved. April
When do you do
30th,
these?
May 1st, May
Where do you
2nd.
find time?
Commissioner items, Commissioner Prince.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last week I was on vacation, so I apologize. Thank you for reminding me. I'm never upset when you do that because I know that's a problem of mine. Last week I was on vacation out of the country, so I was not as active as I normally am, but when I came back, I did attend the tourist board meeting, and yesterday with my other commissioners, we all attended what was that?
Custer Emergency
Custer
Services.
emergency meeting. I left a little bit early, but that's what I've been up to.
Good. Commissioner Kanda? Thank you, sir.
Well, I thought I was going to get to take some time and catch up, but I did take 3 days, and we went and met our son who's in France and brought his dog over, his PCS, and back. Met him in Kansas to get the dog, transatlantic dog. But in the meantime, I looked back and I was just telling Kelly, it's been so much happening. I did work the meeting with the OEM guys, and we did sign the contract for the new radios. So we're getting new radios for the emergency services, which is a good thing. Hibbs Peak or Lookout Mountain or whatever you want to call it today. Working the right-of-way on that. We did have a problem with that right-of-way. One of the owners above the Silver Cliff Ranch was restricted in bringing up fuel, and we worked that through with Clint and our lawyers, and I think Clint will say a couple things on that here in a minute. On the right-of-way is real, and we're trying to formalize that. We'll do that at another meeting. And possibly, if you've never had a chance to get up there, it's a beautiful right-of-way. It's a beautiful road. It's a nice place for a picnic. And so maybe down the road we'll have part of the Custer County Trails program end up with a trail going up there. It would be really, really slick. Also working, since I mentioned it, Road and Bridge, both the budget and the roads. I know, and you guys are lucky down here in Wetmore. You've got a few bad roads, but we try to get to those as quick as we can. But you got a lot of pavement too that I wish we could steal from you. Which reminds me, we are putting some pavement down in front of this building. Gary was here this morning, and he and I worked it out. He's got an opportunity in June to do that. So you'll see some detour signs around the back of this building so we can do that. But in the meantime, the priorities, just so you know, we're going to be putting mag chloride down, been getting a lot of comments on how great Fremont County is on some of their dirt roads. The reason they are is because they've been packing a lot of mag chloride in over a lot of years. We are going to hit the hard spots, the slopes that are really bring up the washboards first. We're doing 13 miles out of Oak Creek now, if you're down that way. But they are prioritized. Just because you got a real bad road and there may be 20 people on it, there's another worse road that might have 100 people on it. And so we're trying to do that smartly. And we're going to work with Shannon, talk with him. We need more, and we are going to put up more speed signs, make sure people understand. Because sometimes you forget, you get going, your mind daydreams, and you want to race over the top of those washboards. But we need to slow it down. And so as we do that, Shannon will be putting a little more effort out there, making sure that we get some deputies watching as we improve the roads as we go through in time. And we'll coordinate that with Shannon. So rest easy. Jay mentioned it. The Custer County Emergency Services Committee met. It was a good meeting to try to coordinate all our efforts across the county and into other counties as well in a disaster like a forest fire or a flood or whatever might happen. So it's a very useful meeting. And then Tom and I did hit the Upper Arkansas River meeting, water conservancy meeting over in Salida with Bob Senderhoff, who's the board director over there, and that was very informative as well. Helps us understand some things that we can do, should do, and might not want to do. So we're working that. And then the background, the Justice Center has been going on, and Tom, you can probably tell us a little more about that. So that's all I know for now.
Good. Okay, thank you. Just a quick rundown. I did attend kind of a retirement program for Christy Veltri at the bowling alley on May 4th. She had served as a mayor and was part of the town council up there. I did, as Bill indicated, attended the Upper Arkansas Water Conservation District, the Workforce Development Committee that Jay and I are on. I attended the Building Trades banquet, year-end banquet down in Florence. we did a tour, went on a tour of their school and some of the projects that they're working on. That building trades program in Florence built a duplex. They're going to use that for teacher housing, and so that was all part of that workforce meeting that we had in Canyon City. Let's see, then we had a tourism meeting. A tourism board met yesterday. Jay is on that committee on the 14th. Sorry, not yesterday, but the 14th. And then last night we had our Republican Central Committee meeting. Mr. Kanda and I attended that as well. So just a brief rundown. Go ahead.
It's something important too, airport-wise. Been working, as I mentioned in the last meeting, us be getting a Jet A up here and improving the apron for jet aircraft, which is a good thing because the Custer County Emergency Services also asked if they're going to be able to use that fuel, and it's going to be available for anybody. And they think it's a great thing because now the helicopters that come up here to do Flight for Lives or for other search and rescue missions don't have to fly all the way to Pueblo or to Colorado Springs to refuel and waste hours and fuel. So that's a good thing, and I will be finalizing up what we think are going to be necessary, and then we'll be bringing it to the board for action on what we will do, all at the expense of the people that bought the south end of Wolf Springs Ranch. So we'll be back on that in the future.
And then I wanted to just mention that we're having a Health and Safety Response Team Committee meeting this afternoon at 2 o'clock in an effort to form a group that of all the pertinent entities so that we can respond appropriately to any hazardous or other situation that might arise in the county. So we're working on that as well. Anything else, gentlemen? Thank you. Attorney items?
Just to follow up to what Bill was saying, we did meet with the attorney representing, it's not a secret, Claudia Morris is the name of the property owner there at the end of Silver Cliff Ranch subdivision, the right-of-way that goes on up to the communication towers there on Hibbs Peak or Lookout Mountain, goes through her property and then on up. And she's had some issues there, but it's very clearly a public right-of-way. It was declared to be a public highway by a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners back in 1986. That wasn't really the way to do it, but that document, which probably should be officially set aside, doesn't make any difference. It's a public right-of-way. Nobody has any right to block it, and the width of it is whatever we're going to need if we do need to get heavy equipment up there or anything else. So we'll formalize that soon. But as a matter of courtesy, the attorney was going to get back with some kind of a written proposal, and I was waiting to get that proposal before we went forward on it. Let's see. Shannon has had, our sheriff, had a problem a couple of years ago with an individual giving him a lot of trouble, and I got involved in that, and that person actually backed off for quite a while, and we thought the problem was solved, but he's kind of starting up again, and so I'm dealing with it. And my personal feeling is that the person that's doing this has some mental issues. It's very clear if you read the communications that he's sending to everybody, and since I got involved in it, the first thing he does then when I tell him to stop doing it, he files a criminal complaint against me with the Colorado State Patrol, which they don't have any jurisdiction. And this is the second time he's done that to me. I got a call from the Major Copley of the State Patrol saying that he was sending a formal letter saying he wasn't going to do anything about it again. But it may be to the point where I want to consider, and I would discuss this in an executive session with all of you, whether we may want to try to take some kind of formal legal action against this individual to make him stop wasting. There was a time when he was just inundating Brenda with emails a couple of years ago, so I'd like to put a stop to that if I can. He sort of had wandered off and had gone in another direction for a while, but it looks like he's kind of come back around again. And may want to start up with the county again. And then the other things had nothing to do with county work, just patting myself on the back. I did my semi-annual trash pickup along 6 miles of concrete grade. Makes me feel very virtuous when I do that. Roger Squire from Road and Bridge gave me 4 of those big 55-gallon bags. I filled them all up with trash that I picked up and a lot besides that. And I can report unequivocally that the beer of choice for people that throw cans and bottles out the window, Busch in cans and Bud Light in bottles, because I picked up hundreds of those.
I'm going to get Gary Hyde to make a sign that these 2 miles are the Clint Smith dedicated highway.
And there'll be bullet holes in it.
Well, that might be a good use. I don't know.
It was 6 miles, actually.
Is it 6 miles? All right, well, we'll dedicate, holy smokes, 6 miles he walked.
I didn't walk. I rode my ATV in the ditch and picked up stuff.
Wow.
And was scared to death by about looked like an anaconda, but it was a very big bull snake. And
Was it dead, Clint?
No, he was not. And I was going to try to chase him off the road, but he chased me off the road. That's all.
Looking for that Bud beer.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. But before we move on, I want to ask Commissioner Kanda, and certainly with all due respect, sir, you said you did sign a contract?
Yeah, with for the services that they had that we set aside in the meeting we all validated, remember?
No, I do not. Can you
We'll have to
expound
get
on
it
that?
for
Was it a contract with?
Motorola, they bought the radios that they had programmed and saved for
They being?
the emergency services group.
Oh, okay. So you signed that on behalf of the emergency services,
Right.
not the commissioners?
Right, I'm
Okay.
the vice director,
Right.
whatever,
Okay.
chair for the group.
I was thinking you signed it on behalf of the commissioners. And I didn't remember us discussing that or voting on it, but you're talking about
It's
through Custer Emergency Service.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Just I want to let everybody know there's new radios. Be safe.
Administrative Assistant, Ms. Brenda, you have something?
Yeah, I had occasion to call about a credit card snafu that we had. The flowers that we put on Jay's credit card for Tim Schwartz's.
James County credit card.
Yes, the county credit card. Ended up on the same check with Virginia's credit card because they all go to the same place and the same address. And then they credited it all to Jay's number and didn't give Virginia any credit at all. So I was trying to call on Jay's card and found out that Donna Hood and Bob Katnig are the people that are the only ones that are authorized to do anything on that credit card. So, so then I called on behalf of Virginia and I got that all straightened out. So we're good there. But then they said, well, I said, those people aren't here anymore. And they said I had to fill out some kind of a resolution changing the administrator of the card to someone else. And after talking to Clint, he suggested that we let those credit cards lapse, all 3 of them, yours and Bob's and Donna's, and start over. And so we can do that. But when I reserve rooms for you, I need a credit card. Now I can use Donna's Hobby's credit card, or I could get a credit card on behalf of. So it's up to you guys. I don't really care. I can certainly go get Donna's credit card when we need to use it. So.
All right, thank you. And Counselor, please weigh in when you feel appropriate. Gentlemen, do you feel like we need a motion that we can allow Brenda to have a county credit card to be used on our behalf?
I don't think we
Have
need a
that in the form
resolution.
of a motion, or what do you think, Counselor?
I don't think that's really necessary to do a formal motion on it. I just think it makes sense. It's almost impossible to close out that old account because the people that have the authority to do it don't have the authority legally anymore to do it. So I think we just let that one fade away and have her get a new account. But I don't see that it has to be done by a
Okay.
motion.
My question then too is, when you said we'll just let it lapse, do we, and you said to kind of fade away, does it, will it? Or do we need to cancel those?
We can't cancel it
They
because the only ones that can cancel it are Bob Katnick and Donna Hood, and they officially don't have the authority to do anything on it. It's just there, so I'd say let's not use it. And,
Let it go until the credit cards expire?
yeah,
Do you know when they expire, Clint? Is it like in a year? Or
Any idea?
I have to
5 years?
look. Yeah, I think it's 19 actually, so.
Okay.
Next year.
Yeah.
So we'll
but
just,
we need to, I mean, if you automatically try to renew it and put a charge on the account, we need to let Donna Hobby know, don't pay that charge, whatever we need to do, so they'll terminate it themselves.
When I did my credit card, it says Custer County, and then it has my name, but the commissioners had to sign so
like it ought to
I
be.
would think that you could do
Seemed like Tom, you
something
could
to cancel them.
Seems like.
Because when mine expires, they just send me a new one instead of it just going away.
well,
Yeah.
I know Brenda looked into that, and they wouldn't hardly talk to her until she filled out some documentation because her name was not on that. So she did go through those hoops to get us to where we're at today. So it's certainly something I just couldn't call and cancel because my name's not on it either, so.
I just think it's more trouble than it's worth to try to keep going through all this paperwork to cancel it. Just forget about it. I mean, if somebody starts using a credit card down the road, someone will deal with it, but I don't think it's going to happen.
All right, thank you.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Anything else, ma'am?
That's it.
Okay. Any staff reports? Okay, we'll move on. Unfinished business to come before the board, gentlemen? I have none.
Would the discussion of the fire ban be unfinished business?
No.
Would it be a renewal?
No, because we had dealt with it at our past meeting, so we put it under new business. Anything else, sir? Okay, we'll move on. I would inform our audience today that we will allow public comment on each item that we vote on that's on the agenda under old or new business. So I will probably have to be reminded by my co-commissioners, but I will try to remember to allow for public comment prior to a vote. We don't have a lot of things to vote on today, but you certainly will have an opportunity to voice your opinion, and I would ask that you keep your remarks brief and succinct to the point of which we are discussing right prior to the vote. So
And I promise I will too.
with that, we will move on. Crespin is here on behalf of the U.S. Forest Service, so we'd like to turn the floor over to you, sir, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
It is great to be here. Appreciate time on your agenda today.
You're welcome.
I want another
And
one of your
I
cards.
apologize for being a little bit late. My intent was when we had the new commissioners on sworn in to come in, and but it's not too late.
No, it's never
For
too
the
late.
things
Glad to have you
that I wanted to bring forward. And I'll start by commending you on your community building here. I had not been in here since the remodel, and it is really nice. We, having used it in the past on fires and other things, it certainly is a quality.
You got a place picked out for your sleeping bag?
Yeah, at least that, so very, very nice. My intent was just to give you informational things that I hope are of interest, things that are going on, things that maybe, if you have interest, if you want to get into more details, we can follow up. But it was more just information sharing. And I'm going to kind of go across the board on things.
Okay.
And I'll start with the issue that is probably on most of our minds, certainly. I had a discussion with Charlie this morning on how dry it is. And I don't need to tell you anything that you don't already know with where we're at with conditions. But I did want to share with you kind of where we are on the forest and the information that we use. And Dennis Page, I'm sorry, my fire management officer has joined me this morning to help correct me where I go astray here on things. But So you know, we're seeing conditions that are setting new marks, and you know, we kind of measure good and bad by comparing to the last time we had a bad year and a big fire season, and those years are certainly memorable, and we compare much of what is going on now with what we saw in 2002. If you'll recall, that was a long fire season. We had the big Hayman burn, we had the Iron Mountain fire just north of Westcliff, and conditions are pretty extreme, and we certainly are there right now. And all those indices that tend to tell us that we're lacking moisture, whether it's fuel moistures or the number of red flag warning days, all those things are certainly peaking out. And it's taken us to the point where we are taking actions to, in essence, be prepared to deal with what is eventually going to come to us, we think. And we have, for a few weeks now, have been bringing in resources and pre-positioning them, if you will, where we're scattering folks up and down the district on my unit to try to have folks closer to where we might have a start. And that includes engines similar to the ones, our Type 6 engine that you see. We currently have four
engines, one of them is Type 3.
Okay, so we have those additional resources along with our single Type 6 engine that is duty stationed out of Canyon City, and Dennis is, like I say, putting them in different locations. We also are bringing in aircraft, kind of aviation resources, and locating them so that they're available. Pueblo Air Tanker Base, the Fremont Airport, in coordination with the Bureau of Land Management and the state. We have air resources there, including a Type 2 helicopter at Pueblo.
Type 1 helicopter at Fremont.
Why don't you maybe give the resources that you don't have to, I don't have to.
Yeah, why isn't he briefing this?
Yeah.
We have a number of resources overhead. As far as scattering for the district, you know, with the 5 different counties, we've got 2 engines in Walsenburg. Typically, we don't have resources for that south end because we have the 1 engine here. So we have 2 engines there with an overhead. And then I have an additional overhead in Canyon City, 3 Type 6s, 1 Type 3 engine, so kind of a medium engine, a lot of water on it, which will probably be useful this year. In addition, the BLM has brought in 1 additional Type 6 engine as of today, so we feel like we're built up pretty well for mid-May, and it's not June yet, so we'll see how things go.
Fire season's technically not supposed to be here yet.
Not the big portion of the season.
Thank you.
So in addition to those resources, we're also looking to bring in prevention resources, which is really to try to get the word out, to help with raising awareness, to try with working with communities to implement and measures that hopefully will have an effect in terms of human-caused fires. So you can expect that those people are going to be out and about. Certainly there are already news releases and things of that thing, interaction with the media, getting the word out on things, and that will continue.
Where are you most concerned?
Pardon me?
You got them stationed. Where's the hottest spot for you? Where are you most concerned?
Well,
Or are they all the same?
It's kind of right now, this San Carlos, which is our district, which runs from the river and Cotopaxi south to New Mexico, and then the area kind of going west is really kind of, and also on the grasslands, is in the center of the bullseye. Conditions change very bit as you head further north, and I'll get back to that here in a second when I talk about restrictions. So we're in the bullseye. So most of what we're bringing in is centered in this area.
Yeah.
Resources that we brought in for restrictions right now are centered in Pueblo, but they'll be out and about on the ground if that was kind of what you were.
Yeah, that's good.
So one of the actions that we've taken is to move into stage 1 restrictions on this district, not the entire San Isabel, which includes the Salida and Leadville districts, but I'm awaiting word today that the forest supervisor has signed off on the restriction or the order, which moves us into stage 1, which is similar, I believe, to what the county has, in that it restricts open burning to develop sites, develop campgrounds. Public cannot have any fire except in campgrounds. It also begins to limit other things that normally we wouldn't be concerned about, where people are smoking, they got to be in a vehicle or confined building, things of that type. Chainsaws have to have arresters and all the other obvious things. So those obviously are intended to mitigate or prevent human-caused fires. While we're not seeing those types of fires started on the forest yet, people are coming. As you know, we opened all of our campgrounds last Friday. We threw open all of our gates the 1st of May, which is the earliest that we can remember having those gates open. Typically, you can't go down the Greenhorn Road all the way to the end until probably late May. It is dry and dusty, and you can drive all the way to Blue Lakes right now. So it is unprecedented, at least in terms of what we're seeing. So there are no restrictions to access right now, and people are coming, and they're out. So it was time to go into restrictions, and we intend to enforce those vigorously. And we appreciate the support and the help of Sheriff Byerly. He certainly has been in touch with us. We've been communicating, and we'll continue to do that in terms of enforcing that restriction. I want to talk briefly about how we, what our approach is as we kind of go into what could be a very active year. And this is a case every year. When we are made aware or we detect a fire, we immediately respond with resources, and we work with the county under our mutual aid agreements to react to that emergency. But we base all of our decisions on the actions we take on risk exposure. So we develop an appropriate response based on the exposure to firefighters and the public as well. And as you know, and we've had a little bit of discussion about kind of what's going on in your turf, in your county, and certainly on the national forest with regards to the health of the forest and the effects of insect epidemics that continue to play out. They've been going on for years, and they continue to show themselves. And our risk exposure certainly is raised when we consider all those elements that affect fire behavior, not just the weather, but the fuel loading and the topography. And we will never send a firefighter into a situation where the risk exceeds that potential benefit from going in. So we base our decisions, and not to get real technical on you, but our decisions are entirely based on that exposure. So when we look at the Sangre de Cristo landscape, for example, you folks live there, you've been there, you know what I'm talking about when I say that landscape is extremely challenging and for a lot of reasons. So oftentimes, and what we're doing now, Dennis and his folks certainly already have some strategies in mind in terms of how they would approach a fire in that setting. First, with the idea of keeping firefighters safe. And it may not be by going in directly up against the fire and doing things. It likely is going to be step back, see what our best chances are, our best opportunities to deal with this thing. And it could be that we develop a strategy that allows us to have a control feature that is more defendable, that gives us escape routes and safety zones that is not right up against the fire. It could be on a ridge top, it could be off of a road, it could be off the Rainbow Trail, it could be off of a wet area, a creek or something. So we do that and then work with strategies to maybe allow the fire to come to us or to do other things. And I only mention that because oftentimes we get folks that say, oh, why aren't you in there? Why aren't you doing something? And we are. We are, but it's not always apparent what it is we're doing. And so in doing that, certainly it's always important to keep in mind that fire in that landscape in particular is a natural component of that ecosystem. We've taken it out. We collectively have taken it out of that landscape, and getting it back in is really hard. But in some locations, at a certain point and certain conditions, it's a good thing to have in there. I mean, our decisions are based on risk, but we're keeping in mind that a fire that sits up at the top of the drainage that is not going to go anywhere but uphill, maybe can certainly have some benefits and reduce risk into the future. So keep that in mind, because you and the sheriff will certainly be on our calling list when we pick up a fire, and you will know what we're thinking. And I want to hear from you. I'm not just calling to tell you what we're doing. I need to hear what you're thinking, what you're sensing from your constituents. And that all plays into the decisions that we make daily and as an incident might kind of evolve. So I appreciate you kind of considering that. Is there anything more that you would add to that, Dennis?
I think the only other thing I'd add is, life safety is number one, firefighters and the public as well. And so I commend both Sheriff Byerly and Cindy Howard as well on working on the evacuation things, because we know fires don't just occur up on Forest Service. So having those plans in place, I think, really position you in a much better, or have you in a much better position of success or probability of success. So I very much appreciate the hard work.
So I'll move along here. I don't want to take off much time. So just a couple of other things, and I know I've talked to you individually about this, but the Junkins fire, we intend to continue with the closure of the South Hardscrabble Road. Last year was the first rainy or monsoonal season that we experienced up there, and it did what we expected it to do. It blew out the road. We expect that it's going to continue to do that for a while longer, and there is significant exposure to folks that are in there. So we don't feel good about opening up the road and let people drive down to where they can't drive any further. The road itself has been blown out, so there is no continuous route through there. So I'm certainly interested to hear what you're thinking at some point in terms of what that road, what the future of that road might be. And I'm certainly open if you'd like to go in there and see it. We'll throw the gates open and drive in there and look at what it is that we're concerned with. If you're interested.
So is there no plan at this point? Excuse me. Is there no plan at this point to rebuild the road?
No. Our engineers and again our experts are saying if you go in there now and rebuild the road, there's a chance that you're going to get another blowout event this year. So typically these watersheds, it'll take several years for it to kind of begin to start that healing process that will lessen the amount of flows that we're getting out. And until we get a sense that it has slowed down, it's starting to settle, it doesn't make any economic sense to go in and rebuild that road. Now, I will say, because you folks are aware of, we stand at the ready to work with CenturyTel to do whatever it is they need to do to get that line functional. I know that became a bit of a controversy last year. I got a call from Senator Gardner's office asking why we weren't letting them go in. I said, wait a minute, I'm not sure what you're hearing from whom, but we're ready to help them. So be aware of that. As soon as CenturyTel says we'd like to do something, we're ready to help them put that line in.
Yeah, and I think, I haven't spoken to CenturyTel, but my understanding is that they're kind of in the same boat, I think, economically. They don't want to go in and try to do something unless we repair that road and get so that they have some confidence that that line is going to stay intact. I know it's exposed now, and there's some concern from citizens in the county of when that's going to be addressed. I understand what you're saying, that healing process needs to occur on that landscape. Is there room for that discussion about that road, or is that discussion pretty well been had, and they've said,
Well-
hey, we're not going to do anything, period.
The
for a
single
while.
discussion that I've had with CenturyTel, the representative here, we made it clear that at this point, we were not intending to rebuild the road. This was last summer. Don't know what the future holds. It's still too early to determine if we're going to build it. But we're ready to, if they see other alternatives, move the line, put it overhead, do something else, we're ready to do that. But if they're singly focused on putting it back into the borrow ditch,
Probably not going to happen.
probably not going to happen.
And I'm sure you've taken into consideration firefighter safety if we have to go in there. I'm
Absolutely.
sure I'm not bringing up anything that's not already been
Yeah,
discussed
no,
ad
certainly,
nauseam.
we recognize that the county and others have a need to go in, and that combination on both ends certainly allows that. Recently, I gave approval to Fish and Game, Parks and Wildlife, rather, to go in. They're conducting a mountain lion survey, and their survey crew wanted to go in, and we said, yep, go in, but be aware, don't park your truck down by the creek. Let's get it on a high point and be aware of whether up above, upstream. So that certainly is the case. So I'll move on here. One thing that maybe tied back to fire, what's going on, is Dennis primarily is taking the lead on the construction of a helipad at Lake Isabel. And I mention that because I know that you here and certainly are involved with that periodically, along with Pueblo County, on search and rescue or recovery or emergency situations where a helicopter is brought in. And typically the only place that we can put down a helicopter is on that north parking lot. And when that parking lot is full of people and other things are using it, becomes problematic. So we are working on a helipad immediately behind our garage down there. There's a big ball point, and we hope to develop it or have a pad put in or a gravel pad put in here in the next few weeks. So be aware of that, and certainly it serves not only for emergency situations where the sheriffs need to call in Flight for Life, but also firefighting resources. But Lake Isabel is a dip site that we use, and certainly would be used that way.
Well, so is that the same location that Pueblo County had been looking at as well? So you're working with Pueblo County on that?
Yeah, so we're just following up on the same idea.
Okay.
We just have the opportunity right now to try to get it finished.
Yeah, because I had talked to Sheriff Taylor and also the Chief Mears about that, and then also Dylan as well, who's involved with all the emergency stuff. And we had talked about that quite a while, but I thought that Pueblo had already at least started some initial work on having that.
No, what we're doing is, we've got a dozer coming in during the next week or so, and that dozer's gonna pull out all the stumps that are left and kind of shape it so we can go in and frame it. And probably, we probably won't won't frame it for concrete, we're gonna put it gravel, just to make it usable when we need it.
Thanks.
Let me see here. I mentioned we've opened all of our campgrounds. We're meeting today with the concessionaire that runs the campgrounds. They'll be occupying and starting to do everything that they do. We're working with the new trails group at Westcliff. We put them through a weekend training session here a couple of weeks ago, and they're anxious to hit the trails, and we're certainly anxious to have them help us. So Jeff, as our lead on that, Jeff Luthier is working with that group, and we're anxious to have them work with us. So last month, we had some interesting phone calls that kind of hit us out of the blue, coming primarily from your neighbors to the south, down the Orfano Basin. And after like the third or fourth call, we realized what was going on. That was that there was some controversy over information that had been put out by the BLM about oil and gas leasing, and in some parcels all in the Orfano Basin. And folks were concerned that those leases were going to occur on the national forest. And some folks had already imagined that the fracking was going to begin momentarily. They're to the point of starting to drill and frack and all the things with that. And we calmed them down, but what we, after talking to BLM, we realized that there are quite a few leases that are being offered, but none are on national forests. They're on BLM lands in that area, and certainly there's they go through the lease process, and and then the leasee can decide when and where they want to develop or go in and drill. But that is going on, and there's nothing on the Custer side of the divide there that we're aware of. It's all down below there on that Custer, so just be aware of that. Let me see here. So we got word on Monday that the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, is going to be in the neighborhood. So we haven't, and that he intended to stop and visit as many offices as he could. We haven't seen him, but he may pop in this week. I know he was out at Rocky Ford yesterday meeting with some agricultural entities, and we're hopeful that he'll pop in and we can share with them what's going on in our national forest, but we don't know what his agenda is.
Paul, would that be part of the, so it's my understanding, and I haven't heard it from the governor's office itself, but the governor has essentially declared that the Sangre Range, and I mean, we're kind of in the bullseye there, but that we're already in an agricultural drought disaster area, and they're actually considering some commerce effects from the drought as well. And so could that be part of the,
I would bet that the Secretary has been briefed thoroughly on what's going on with fire and conditions. He was on the Santa Fe on Monday, Santa Fe Forest, and he was looking at the watershed right above the city there, which is all national forest, and that we're at. Dennis alerted me a couple of weeks ago that the Sangres now are in the drought map, which to me is kind of exceptional drought. I mean, it seems almost unreal to think that 14,000 foot mountain range is in that category.
And there was
No
some
snow.
There was some question about why the wet mountains weren't included in that, but
I had those same questions.
Yeah.
I assume that it's because they don't have the snow-tell sites up there, but they will be revisiting them again this Friday.
It's the 30,000 foot view. They're walking around going, oh God.
Yeah. Yep. But certainly if he stops and talks to us, we are going to be, probably one of the primary things we're going to be telling him. So let me get through these, and then I'll entertain any questions you might have. This is just a heads up, because it certainly is for us. We're starting to see the emergence of recreational shooting on this district, and that's not the hunting kind of shooting; it's target shooting. And what I've seen it's starting to emerge is what we're seeing in the urban districts, the Pikes Peak district, the South Platte district, those districts north of there, Boulder and Idaho Springs, this is one of the most difficult recreational activities that we are facing right now in terms of managing. How do we deal with this? Right now, it's okay to shoot on national forest, on public lands. We expect you to pick up your trash. You cannot haul your refrigerator or your computer monitor out there and blow it up, but you can sure set up a target as long as it's not an exploding target sort of a thing. It's okay to do that. We expect folks are being safe and all those sorts of things. But what we're seeing is what you and I probably grew up with, the shooting, kind of plinking cans with the .22, is not what folks are doing nowadays. And it has become a much more serious management issue, and not just in terms of trash and lead and all that, as you can imagine, but exposure to the neighbors. And we are seeing it. In fact, I'm headed over to the 12-mile road today to kind of assess and talk to folks that are just in a frenzy right now, because it's, people are coming there to target shoot. So, we don't have any strategy in mind right now to deal with that, but as it becomes more of a issue or burden, we're probably going to be talking to you folks. Our preference, anytime the folks call and say, where can I shoot, and I either send them to the BLM lands or to a range, you know, there's a range in town, there's a range over in Pueblo, there's the range over in Westcliff there. We send them there, but if they want to shoot on national forest, it's okay as long as you're compliant with all of it. But it is something that I'm just giving you a heads up. We'll probably be talking to you in the future. And then I'll end with, and this kind of ties into what I said earlier with the conditional forest. So we are continuing with our efforts in reducing hazardous fuels, and certainly doing our part to manage for the health of the forest. And so when we go into restrictions, while there are a lot of reasons for fire exposure or fire risk that point us towards going to restrictions, we certainly need to consider what that means to other users. You know, if you want to go camping, you're going to have to camp in a campground, and we don't want to impact the economy of an area because of maybe a needless action. The other thing too is that those folks that are making a living on the national forest, loggers, operators, outfitter guides, certainly are going to be affected by that. So we're trying to be mindful of that. Because we do have those operations occurring. We have a logging operation over by Lake Isabel on the old Scout Ranch Road. Mr. Crabtree is in there right now, and then he'll also be logging on top of the Greenhorn, and we're going to have others. So, but we're continuing with those projects and those efforts to reduce fuels and to certainly try to put the forest in a better condition. And I'll mention a couple of projects because we hope that we're going to start seeing some activity in there. One is this area right above us here, what we call the Lock Mountain and Adobe Peak area. We are have analyzed that. We're going to take a fresher look at it, but we're going to take a look at what maybe we could do really from the Oak Creek Grade Road all the way across the top of that flat all the way down the highway. And
Mostly on the north side then, is that what you're saying?
Pardon me?
Mostly the north side of Block Mountain?
Well, we're not sure what we're going to do yet, but the intent would be to improve vegetation conditions for hazardous fuels, to deal with the emerging epidemic of bugs, to improve wildlife habitat, to do all those things. So it could be an array of things. Certainly if there are commercial opportunities to offer commercial products, we'll do that. If most of what we can do is mechanically, we'll do that. We're also going to look at how we might introduce prescribed fire into that. But that'll be ongoing for about the next year, and then hopefully move into some implementation maybe by next summer. But it is, again, focused on trying to do what we can so that fire can occur and it's not in just devastating amounts of fuel, so that communities like Wetmore and others are not being threatened by catastrophic fire. So, and then the other project that we think we're going to have done sooner is what we're calling the East Central Wets Project. And I've mentioned this to the board before, and it starts right here. The north end of that project is Wetmore, and it extends all the way to south of Rye along the whole front face. So we're looking at the very same thing to try to implement that. There's about 20,000 acres of treatment in that. And as we move into doing different things, we'll be focused on those same things. So you'll be updated as those kind of progress and as we maybe move into implementation. But those are two projects that we hope to get on the table and into implementation. So, is there anything I missed?
Just two other quick things regarding the vegetation and fuels reduction. The dead and dying fuels that are out there are definitely hazards. So, in an effort to maintain our relationships with the community, we'll be conducting a slash collection this Saturday at mile marker 1 up there off of the Highway 78, which we've done in the past, and it's basically our last shot prior to the peak of this season. So I would ask the board if you could encourage your constituents to really improve the safety of the firefighters, first responders, and themselves if they can clean their gutters, clean their decks, and really be prepared for evacuations as we start to warm up, and so they're not surprised.
Good. Questions, Commissioner Prince?
I appreciate the work you do.
Go ahead.
Paul, so this is a little off topic, but so because you work in conjunction with Parks and Wildlife on a lot of things because of so many overlapping areas, do you ever have any influence or at least some input, shall we say, into the way they manage some of the, I'll just cut to the chase. Lake Louise is a train wreck for us because it's one of the last, non-fee, non-regulated, just pull in there and it's a free-for-all, camp wherever you want. There's zero regulations. And so as you can imagine, the salty folks that like no regulations show up there, and we've had, just last year, we've had stabbings, guns brandished on folks, assaults, all that type of thing. So I've been trying to push with Parks and Wildlife because, they're short on resources as well, so they can't manage that as well, so it falls to us. And so we have this, I can't tell you how many tickets we've written out there for fires just in the last 45 days, which, has repercussions on you because those fires start and then next thing you know they're burning all over the place and you guys are called in as well. To help us, we need to get some regulations out there. It needs to become a fee area, or at least where you can only camp in developed areas where there are developed fire rings and so forth. And they've been talking about it, but they've been talking about it for 2 years, and they have all the rings where they close them other campgrounds. I've been told, anyways, by Parks and Wildlife officials that they have all the rings to set them in place and everything. They just haven't done it. And I was wondering, maybe y'all could lend us a hand just to kind of nudge.
Well, certainly, and CPW I would consider to be, one of our closest partners.
Sure.
In working on things. They really, they certainly are willing to sit down and listen to us. We don't have any adjacent national forest lands up against the lake, so we're a bit removed in terms of, asking them to coordinate with us. But it does give us, at least in terms of fire restrictions, now that we're into the restrictions, I think gives me a bit more ability to say, hey, Mike Trujillo, hey, the county's in restrictions, the forest is in restrictions, BLM's going to go into restrictions. You guys are the only ones that are not in there, that it really does make it tough. So from the term of peer pressure that way, I'm certainly willing to talk to Mike on the issue of going into a free.
I know that's out of your realm.
But Mike is really pretty good, and Mike and I get along well enough, and he's oftentimes just uses me as a sounding board, and I do the same thing. He's never talked to me about the Weiss, but we have discussed other things relative to how maybe they ought to do things.
And I don't care about the fee necessarily as much as that we have developed camp areas so that we don't have mom and dad and 3 kids camp and then a group of questionable folks come in and camp 5 feet from them and they're cussing and they're drinking, and then all of a sudden you have an altercation because dad's just saying, hey look, do you mind watching your mouth with my kids here? And all of a sudden dad's getting stabbed. And so then that's the problems we're having. And so we need some established camping areas so that we don't have that overlap and and we don't have fires next to we won't have any fires this year, in theory.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wouldn't be surprised is playing into this is that, as you folks know, what is it now, like 4 or 5 years ago, the Division of Wildlife consolidated with Florida Parks and became a single agency. And while they are merged in their one agency, there's still, my perspective is there's still a variance in terms of who's doing what. And Mike Trujillo, who was the local area supervisor for the wildlife side, if you talk to him, he's saying, oh, the campground stuff isn't my responsibility, that's somebody else. So that coordination, if you talk to Mike, you may be talking to the wrong person. And my sense is that, well, Justin is enforcing regulations and he's a law enforcement officer, he's not the campground planning guy. Right. So talking to the right person, and Mike would be the one to tell you who is that, is really probably the key thing, because it may not be the game warden, it may be another person that's dealing with the park side of that agency.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Sorry if I went a little long
No,
there,
that's
but
okay.
like I said, I certainly would welcome any requests you have. If you want to get out and look at the South Orange Capitol Road or anything else, please just call me, and I certainly would make myself available.
Can I have your card again? You gave it to me last time, and you mentioned you were having problems with getting fire mitigation kind of things and selling timber off the land. We're having a lot of good luck in the county with people that own property clearing it and getting grants to do that, to help do that. If that's still an issue, because we've got several companies that I think would be very interested in buy-in or participate in a fire mitigation program to get the timber off there and make some money off the forest as opposed to paying taxes to fight the fires.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that
sure.
before.
I'll give it to Brenda. I'll bring it in.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a couple of calls this winter from folks that have moved into the area that are small operators. A guy brought in a mill from the Black Hills, set up over east of the interstate near Rye, and he's looking for small. He doesn't want to do a 10,000 CCF sale. He wants small stuff.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to work with those small operators, give them enough to.
Well, and there's some pretty big outfits that are
So
working.
you're changing some policy on that, Paul?
What's that?
Because you're changing some policy on that? Because I know for the longest time the Forest Service, it was big contracts, not the smaller ones. And we had visited, I don't know, a year and a half ago about that you guys were considering looking at trying to do some smaller stuff.
The issue is there aren't big operators anymore. Most of what we have out there is willing to do work are small operators. So,
Yes, sir. One quick question. Maybe I missed it. At what point, we have all these fire restrictions down here. At what point does the Forest Service put a fire restriction on?
We
We
measure.
always have a difference of opinion.
Yeah, no. We try to base our decisions on tangible, measurable criteria, so that, in fact, we know when we're there. And we have several that we look at. And once we are hitting, I think it's 3 or 4. Once we are hitting 4 of those trigger points, then we're likely to go into restrictions. Last week we hit 3, and then a day later we hit trigger number 4. So that's what moves us into it. So, and we certainly want to be mindful that if we're there and we're ready to go, that we have conditions that warrant that. Instead of going in and then 2 weeks later they go away and we're back out. And because now, when we go into restrictions this week, we expect we're going to be there for quite a while now. So we certainly have those, and I can share with you what those criteria are, but there are things that we know that we measure. Fuel moistures, ERCs, energy release components. Resources. Are there resources available to us that we can bring in?
Because the question is that we have a fire restriction here, and I'm going home with the sheriff. These people up in Hartscrafts up here that's Forest Service land, they go in there and start their fires.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, again, Charlie, this weekend, those fires, like in Smith Creek, which is always, those are going to be legal. Now, it's only as good as our ability to enforce, and we intend to enforce them, but certainly having eyes on this, and working with the sheriff, we support it. And if he goes in there and he sees somebody being dumb about it, we certainly would encourage the sheriff to write a ticket on it.
Could you stand for another question or two?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get up to leave.
I remember one year, people were freaking out. They'd go in the grocery store to want to buy charcoal, and they did not have it. It must have been a stage 3 ban. I'm not sure about that. But I've had some people ask, and you brought up a great point about opening the campgrounds probably earlier this year than ever. So there are some people who say, well, wait a minute, why would the Forest Service increase their exposure by opening the campgrounds earlier than try to hold off that population and that use as long as possible? And then we heard it yesterday in a meeting, we're in a stage 2 fire ban in the county, but yet everybody's selling firewood for campfires. And so I think we just got this thing going on, and so I guess number one, my question would be, why did you open these campgrounds as early, really, as you felt possible, and does that increase your exposure?
Well, we opened them because the public is ready to use them. The concessionaire, again, they're under a permit, is asking it's a money-making business for them. So they're wanting it as long a season as they can get. So if there are not other reasons except, the fact that it's a dry year, we're probably going to try to make that recreational opportunity to the public. I don't know what the percentage of fires that are started in a given year, how many come from escape campfires, but probably not very many. I mean, you hear about them when they happen. Sure. You hear about it. I heard there was one over in Grand Junction that jumped I-70 this year. It was an escape campfire. But there aren't many compared to the other ways that folks start fires. Somebody driving down the road with an exhaust pipe dragging on the ground, or other crazy things. Lightning fires are probably our most common. Is that what you say? Is our most common ignition source. So really, and it's that whole balance is how do we make the public lands available and open to folks that want to go do things. It's their public land, and balance that risk of fire. And we're certainly trying not to be overly paranoid about that, but certainly manage that risk as best we can.
I would add to that with them being in fires being allowed now only in the improved campgrounds, almost all of ours have campground hosts, which the concessionaire actually employs. So we've got a better eye on that. We've also got them more concentrated versus the little 2-track back in the backwoods that somebody may have left a campfire. And as long as people are following the law, theoretically, we should not have those.
Yeah, good point.
So if conditions progress, obviously, our stage 2 restricts any fire, period. In campgrounds, anywhere, you cannot have an open fire.
Good. It's stage 2.
Stage 2.
But you're in stage,
We're stage
1 now.
Yes.
Yeah. And the question I was going to ask Dennis, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit, we talked about that. I think you mentioned it at the Homeland Security meeting in Pueblo, with respect to pretty much the stingrays now is what I'm talking about. Percentages of lightning-caused fires are probably much greater in the stingrays than human-caused, I would guess.
Yes, although I can say that in speaking with the previous chief that they do have a number of areas that they get abandoned campfire calls. So although they may not have escaped into becoming a wildfire, there are a number of places where the people will leave campfires unattended.
Well, we're of course going to address our countywide fire ban again today, and most likely extend that. And we will continue to try to promote that whole idea of you just can't walk away from a campfire. That's all there is to it. It's crazy. So,
yeah. Have you heard? So in our meeting down in Pueblo, and I brought up about the fact that a lot of the public service announcements that come out are from other states. And so DFPC, Phil Daniels, in that meeting, he sent an email to his, I can't remember her name now, who then contacted me and said that they were going to try to do something. I would hear from her within the week. And so how many months ago now was that? And I haven't heard a peep. Have you heard anything about whether the state's trying to do some?
No, I don't know about the PSA per se, but it is Wildfire Awareness Month. They've been doing a fair amount of posts, both Twitter and Facebook, to try and encourage some of that. I will add, though, that if we continue down the path that we are on at this point with dryness and expected dryness in the future, is we'll bring in a prevention team. We've done that several years in the past, but we'll bring one in and they will work on those PSAs and improve the outreach on that.
Commissioner Candy, did you have any questions?
No, I'm good now.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it very much. I know you guys are busy, but thank you for taking the time.
Are you going to continue with the summer meeting at Lake Isabel?
Yes, next month.
So
yes,
we'll try to get on the agenda then. That seems to be kind of a good time to intersect with that group of constituents down there. So we will be in touch and try to at least be available and share with you what's going on at that point.
Let me see if I can find that date.
Is it the 20th?
20th?
I believe so, yes.
I'm just going to add too, because I don't know if Paul's going to have an opportunity to come back to the board again before, but Paul is leaving the Forest Service later this summer.
Meant to ask you about
so
that.
he may not be able to come back to but I just want to say, I really appreciate the relationship. I mean, I've known Paul since, for a long before I was even considered as a sheriff's candidate in Kansas City there. So I just appreciate the relationship we have. And, we don't always agree on things because we both have different interests in mind, but always the consummate professional, willing to work with us and has our interests then in the force in mind. And so great relationship. It's hopefully they can find somebody that we can carry that on with. That's my commitment, to keep moving that forward. But I just appreciate Paul and his willingness to work with us. So.
Yeah, thanks. We learned a lot.
Thank you for bringing that up too.
Words and likewise. And I haven't sent a date out, but you folks will know when I'm done. So appreciate it.
Well.
Hopefully you will too.
Yeah.
And hopefully we don't have to spend time on a fire together before it happens. But I'm not going to hold my breath.
That's right.
Well, we hope that retirement doesn't mean you're old and worn out.
Oh, heck no.
Thank you for all you've done. We appreciate
Actually
that.
get some time to hunt.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you, Dennis. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Dennis.
Thanks a lot.
See you guys.
Folks, can you tolerate just a few minute break for
Yes.
a restroom break real quick? We'll stand in recess for about 3 minutes. Okay, we will call the meeting back to order. Thank you for allowing a few minutes there. Next item on the agenda is scheduling a budget workshop in June. I have spoken to Sam DiNardo. I wanted to bring it to the commission today and see if we can't come to consensus on the possibility of having a mid-year budget workshop June 21st at 9 a.m.
Got to check.
And before you get too concerned, sir, the intent of this budget workshop would be to meet with Sam DiNardo, our finance officer, Don Hobby, Miss Virginia in the treasurer's office, and possibly Kelly Camper, because she handles all of the transfers when it comes to budgets. So it would just be with those people. It's not going to be with departments and all that. It's
Unless you want to come.
Well, it's intended for the commissioners and those people to sit down and talk about budget items. It's a workshop, so it would be open to the public, but that was my intent anyway. Gentlemen, open for comments or questions.
June 20th, or San Isabel. You're thinking about doing it on
June 21st at 9 a.m., the day after the San Isabel meeting, yes.
On the
I figured
calendar,
it would be.
that's
Okay, thank you. I spoke with Sam. He thought that'd be great. Encouraged it actually, and they will be done with their audit then. Of course, they'll discuss that audit as well at that time.
Yeah,
so
good.
if you're okay with that, I'd like to firm that up with those appropriate people. We'll get that on the schedule. And then I also, next on the agenda was the custodian maintenance performance review. I just wanted to inform my fellow commissioners. I did conduct that performance review with Mr. Ed Reinhardt. I'm very pleased with the work he's done. I think that's probably a common opinion of his work so far. I think he does great working with people, both customers coming into the courthouse, co-workers, employees at the courthouse, and is just more than willing to do whatever he can to make our facility better, more eye-appealing, certainly more functional, and has, in my opinion, done a great job to this point. He replaced all of those smoke detectors. What was it, 31 or something? Went around, we bought new smoke detectors, and he replaced those and has done some other work. I think he's doing a great job on our yard. The lawn's looking better, and it took a beating last year, so we're trying to revive it. And then I have spoken with Donna Hobby, his 6-month review this was it. That probationary period will end, so I will look to her for a recommendation about increasing his salary. So if you have any questions or comments about that, certainly we'll field those, but I just wanted to let you know that that has been done. I will also do the same thing with our IT director, because his 6 months, actually, we hired him January 1, so that'll be coming up.
Good.
So,
Hey, quick one on your budget workshop. You
Yes.
doing it in the BOCC room?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, I would guess if we get a bunch of people and the courtroom's open, we could move into there, but I was assuming we'd do that in the commissioner's room. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
since you're on the custodial subject, would it be appropriate?
it would. Go ahead. Yes. Yep, thank you for
The
reminding me.
list that you asked me for
Yes.
yesterday, I got multiple copies there, so.
Yeah, I'd spoken
everybody can.
with Mr. Anderson about, because when we hired our custodian, we really did not lay out exactly what was expected of him, because we didn't know. We weren't sure how we were going to work the airport in. We weren't sure about search and rescue building. So Mr. Anderson has put together a list and had talked to me about the possibility of discussing that today and then having a subsequent conversation with our custodian. He's been going down there regularly and doing some work, but this will give him some idea.
Yeah, and, I talked to Bob Jolly about it yesterday, and this is what we came up with. It's pretty much, it looks like just a minimal thing, but that's about all it needs down there, is just what we've outlined.
Okay, all right, I will certainly give this to him and have a conversation with him. I'm probably not going to say this is what you will do from now on, but I'll say this is what they would like to have you consider. If there's something on here, he said, man, I think he's probably doing most of this now, don't you? Or
Some of it.
Okay, all right. So let me have that conversation with him, if that's all right, gentlemen. And
You thinking once a month, twice a month,
Once a week.
once a week?
We have a lot more foot traffic through that building than you'd imagine.
Yeah, and I don't know, we may at some point have to look at saying, okay, we'll provide the custodial stuff down there, but we're gonna have to tap into your budget or to help pay for that. I don't know. We're paying for his travel right now to go down there and do that. So I'm just throwing that out as a possible discussion in the future. But let me talk with him and see what he thinks. I might go down there with him one day when he's doing that cleaning, so I get a little more hands-on about how much time that's taking him and so on and so forth. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, the custodial service that we had before, I forget the guy's name, it's been gone so long.
Yeah, Dave Post, I would imagine.
Yeah,
So you're talking about
Dave was putting in 2 hours a week, and he was doing a lot more than what we've outlined here.
Okay.
So.
Good. All right, thank you, I appreciate that. Like I say, I will have that conversation with him probably today.
Thanks, sir.
Yep, you're welcome. Now I'd like to move on to the next item of business, discussion item certainly, and that is the potential sale of some county property. I think, gentlemen, when I say the Great Creek 15, I'm talking about 15 acres on Great Creek, 1.6 miles north of town on the west side of the highway. The county owns some property there.
It was a gravel pit.
Yes, part of it is in the 80-acre zone, part of it is in the 35-acre zone. The standard process for selling county property is to offer that to adjoining landowners initially, and then if they do not choose to get involved in that, then we could open that up to the public. So Jackie is working on, yeah. Let me finish the description and then we'll get to that very thing, because it's a great question. And then there's 35 acres in Rosita. It would not do me well to try to describe where that is, other than I know it's really kind of between the town of Rosita, and then Rosita Road goes up and around to the east and then veers out to the east. And so that 35 acres lays in that land northeast of town and west of the road, Rosita Road, that goes out.
So it's got some steep.
Yeah, there's some steep mountain area on the western portion of that. It levels out. There's some potential home sites to the east and also access from the south off of Rosita Road. So Commissioner Prince said, why? It's a great question. I'm bringing this to the group as part of a discussion that came out of a committee, and that is we would like to generate some revenue to be able to use either for landfill expansion or possible funds to be used to promote the acquisition and construction of a new Justice Center as we move along. So that's...
What committee is this?
It came out of the Lands Subcommittee of the Justice Center Committee. Yeah. So Jackie is working kind of on the legal side of that. We do know that the reclamation process on the Great Creek 15 has been completed and closed out with the state of Colorado. We may have to have a survey done on the Rosita 35. We don't believe that's necessary for the Great Creek 15, that those property boundaries are pretty well set.
So, are we setting a precedent that at any time this county needs to raise funds in the future, we're just going to sell off county land?
That's a great question. I can't answer that. I don't know. I think the last time the county sold land was 2016 or 17. I could check the date. Again, I don't know why they sold that land. I'm personally, as commissioner, not terribly concerned about the precedence of the matter. I think these are the two larger pieces of property that the county owns. We do own some individual lots. We have not had a value assessment done on those, but the realtors I've spoken to thought those lots probably looking at $1,000 to $2,000 a piece. It's not a lot of money because they're not very desirable locations. But these two pieces of property we felt like would have enough value for us to consider selling those.
How much value is that?
It's a rough estimate. I think the Great Creek 15 we're looking at probably $70,000 to $100,000. The Rosita 35 probably in the $70,000 range. But until we have an evaluation done, that's just an estimate. So that's kind of...
You're just bringing it up to some thinking.
Yeah, just to discuss it. I think at some point...
The question would be, why do we have it in the first place? And why do we want to keep it?
Well, yeah, those are good questions. Obviously, the county, does own property.
I can understand the gravel pit, why we ended up with that.
Yeah.
I don't know why we ended up with 35 acres.
Yeah.
Must have been a tax deal of some kind.
Yeah, I don't know the history on that necessarily. I think, I just want to bring this up for discussion. I think eventually it will end up before the commissioners to take a formal action on one way or the other if we decide what we're going to do.
My only issue is I think the three commissioners should be involved in the concept of whether we're even interested in selling land.
Exactly.
Right.
To fund, I mean, I grant you we have some very expensive projects that are not funded. The money needs to come from somewhere. I just don't want this decision to be made through a subcommittee.
Absolutely. And it had to start somewhere. And so that's where it started from. They're certainly not going to be making any decisions. They're trying to get enough information to come to the commissioner and say, this is what we think, this is what we recommend. And that's kind of where it stands there. Absolutely not going to be done in committee work, but, and I just bring it as a spokesperson for that lands subcommittee. And I agree with you, Commissioner Prince, that that needs to be, commissioners need to be involved with that. And it is a philosophical precedence kind of a thing to where we need to say, this is how we feel about it, regardless of what that is. And then give the reasons why, and then move on from there. But my thought was that it had to have a grassroots start from someplace, so that's where it started from.
Ideas come from somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. So I would anticipate probably at our next meeting, maybe to have a further discussion about this. Certainly, those committees will continue to function, both the Land Committee and the Justice Center Committee. And we'll move forward with that. So just a kind of a report thing to let the commissioners know where they are at with that. Our next item of business was a letter of support from the Fair Board for capital improvement community donation requests. And so we had supplied that letter to you, I believe. Brenda and I, along with Kelly, have become aware that we have a question about that letter as far as the actual wording goes, and I can refer to that real quick. Let me pull that up.
Restate it, I guess, so it's clear. They want us to sign a letter for support for capital improvement donations.
That's correct. Yeah, they're not asking us for money. They're just asking us to support their effort to go to the community and solicit funds. So the thing that I think Kelly brought it to our attention, actually, correct, that in their letter, and I'll just read this real quick, it says the near-term cost is estimated to be $150,000. The Fair Board and the county have designated $20,000 towards the projects. We are seeking donations for the remainder, $110,000. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know 150 minus 20 is not 110,000. So I sent a letter to the president of the Fair Board asking her if we could correct that. I haven't heard back from her, so my request today of the commissioners would be to...
What are they improving, Tom?
To entertain, and I'll get to that, to entertain a motion to approve their request for this letter subsequent to a change in the mathematics, if that's what they were. Truly, they may have only figured 110,000. They were going to get the money from somewhere else, and I know they are looking and have commitments for some other money through some different organizations. So that may have been that extra 20,000. I don't want to put words in their mouth. The idea of the whole capital improvement process at the fairgrounds. Right now, that committee is looking strongly towards constructing another roof building similar to the existing show barn. They want to convert the existing show barn into a swine, sheep, and goat barn, and then erect another building and use that for the show ring, the steak fry, the livestock sale, and that kind of stuff. Those existing swine pens are just falling down around their necks, and so they realize they either have to dump a ton of money into those, rehab those, put new roofs on them, and then of course they get to that proverbial thing is, should we spend the money on that, or should we take that money and invest it into something more long term? And I think that's where they're at now. I've met with that committee a couple of times, and of course through their meetings in the Fair Board have listened to those suggestions. Drainage is an issue out there. Electrical is an issue out there. It's plumbing. I mean, if you mention it, it is probably an issue.
So, in light of that, I'll move that that the Board of County Commissioners approve their request for us to support them in their fundraising efforts once they clarify or fix their mathematical issues. And if they have some of that money, or, I mean, that's not part of the motion, but, I mean, if they do have some of that coming, that's why they only need the 110, they ought to put it in there just so someone else doesn't have the same issue you have.
Yeah, so I'll wait for clarification for that.
I'll second it.
Second, thank you. It's been moved and seconded to support the Fair Board's letter of donation solicitation to the community and to be reworded if necessary.
So I got a question.
Yes, sir.
What does the support mean? Does that mean this letter is all? Or
Yeah,
does it mean
that's it. We're just saying we agree, we're on board with you going out and requesting donations from the community.
You would think they would want to have some PR kind of stuff for us to sign up to.
I have no idea. This was the first and only thing they brought to us so
what that
far.
support meant, that's all.
Yeah. So they're wanting us, our blessing for them to seek donations from the citizens of the county. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And gentlemen, I would request, because I know they were hoping to get this in the works as soon as possible, in the next few days, if you could swing by Brenda's office and sign that letter. I've got the letter
Doesn't
on
have the
letterhead,
fixes.
but I'm not sure the math is right. So rather than us signing it today, if we can just sign it, we'll wait and get some input from the Fair Board. And if necessary, we can change that, and then you can swing by and maybe in the next week and add your signature to that. I would appreciate that. Thank you. Our next item of business is a DA request to use some budgeted monies for a new office space in Canyon City. I guess formally we probably should entertain a motion of this. Whether we choose to pass that motion or not is, of course, up to us, but the DA is requesting some additional money to finish out their office spaces down there.
Clarify it for a motion, what does the budget money mean? Does that
I
mean
think
something
it's,
that's set aside?
I don't think it's additional money. I
No,
think it's
not
money
additional
that's
money.
in their
Right.
budget already,
Okay,
but
that's what-
it's
that's-
not budgeted
Yeah.
for
what I thought.
that. They would like to use it for
Right.
that.
They would like to use it. That's
You'd
what
like
the
to use
request
money
was.
allocated to the DA already for whatever items to make.
Won't cost us any
Yeah,
more.
and-
It's an allocation.
Right,
Right.
and via our IGAs with those 3 or 4 counties, they have to get permission from each county to move forward with that, is my
And
understanding.
didn't someone request to have a meeting with all the counties?
If there was an issue, yes.
The commission down in Fremont asked about, do we need to have a meeting? And we responded with, if you'd like to have one, we'd like to be part of it. But I think if this was the only issue, and I don't think he's getting much resistance, it doesn't look like he's going to pursue that.
Do we know how much money they?
I don't remember right off.
No.
I could try to go through, but it'd take them.
That sounds more correct, 50,000.
I remember looking at it.
Yeah.
You know, this is obviously something that the DA needs to do their job. It's office space. The money's already been allocated to the DA. They're just asking, instead of going into paying the assistant DAs and that kind of thing, is it okay if we use it for a capital type use as opposed to a service type use?
Okay, I don't have a problem making a motion to allocate or reallocate the money that's already budgeted for the DA for use for the improvement. I'll move. So move.
I'll second that. It's been moved and
That's what I meant.
seconded. Correct me if I misstate you, sir. It's been moved and seconded to approve the expenditures of the budgeted money for the office space down in Canyon City
That's
for
right.
the DA's office. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor? I'm sorry.
Need a second.
Sorry. Did you second it or no? Maybe I did.
No, I did.
Oh,
You did.
I thought you did.
You're so quiet.
I'm jumping the
Sorry,
gun here.
I apologize. I'll try my best to speak up.
You didn't hear him, did you?
Comments from the public?
I'll try.
Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Now you're talking.
Ms. Brenda, would you communicate with them?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. Next item on our business agenda is transfer for a request from the airport board from county general to the airport fund. Mr. Anderson, the chair is yours, or the floor is yours if you'd like to address this.
All right, sir. As usual, I
Write your name on there.
didn't put in a request until after the taxes were collected, so it would impact the general fund hardly at all. We were budgeted $15,000 for transfer from the general fund to the airport fund on this year's budget. We think that with the transfer of this $10,000, it will help us to pay for a load of fuel that is impending. Mr. Jolly said he was going to call Dukes Dispatch yesterday to find an airport to share a load with us. As of noon yesterday, we're under 800 gallons in the tank. so it's time to buy a new load of fuel. Also in our budget, on the airport fuel section of our budget, was impacted in repairs and maintenance by that agreement that the commissioners made to pay Estes,
Eaton sales.
The overage that they requested. And that money should have come out of capital, and I submitted it that way, but it was changed to be paid off that line
Maintenance
item.
and repair.
Maintenance and repair, which was wrong, so we need to butt that back up. Also, on our admin side of the budget, on the line item insurance, that new D&O insurance policy came up out of that line, and we were budgeted short for this year. We had no idea that insurance policy was going to be nearly $4,000 all by itself. So we have liability insurance coming out in August, and that has always been over $1,400, and I expect this year it'll be closer to $1,500. So we need money to pick up that shortfall also. And with no extreme surprises, although I'm surprised, we may not have to draw the rest of the money for this budget year. Hopefully we can just carry through with.
Is it new money or is it money?
In the meantime, I have for your information.
Okay, does this pertain to the transfer, this information you're about to give us?
It pertains to the fuel system.
Okay, that's fine. We'll go ahead and listen to it, and then, or do you want to deal with this issue?
Let's do it one at a time.
Just a question that, just to make sure I'm on board with where we are. You're asking that your budgeted money be moved from the general fund to the airport for your use. So it's not an additional expense, it's your budgeted money.
Right. It is,
Got
it. Is
Okay, just want to make sure I had that right.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, explain to me why you feel, I'm not debating it, I'm just curious, why the replacement of the fuel system with Eaton would be a capital expenditure as opposed to repairs and maintenance.
Well, that installation of that fuel dispenser was budgeted in 2017 as capital expense.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
It was on the capital line.
So this wasn't really maintaining the system there. Eaton really came in and put in a capital expenditure of a whole new system?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir. I just want to, if it's a different issue, let's deal with this.
Let's get this approved or not.
And then
here's some
we
new
can go
stuff.
on. If your information has an impact on the $10,000 transfer, then let's listen to that now.
At this point, it does not.
Okay, all right, good. And I think I heard you, Commissioner Kanda, ask why Kelly's name was on there. And let me address that real quick. Dallas went to Kelly about this because he knew that Kelly handled the transfers.
Okay.
I didn't request Dallas to be here today. I talked to him about it, and he said, I'm planning on being at your meeting in Wetmore, which I appreciate your interest in taking the time, both of you, to come down and deal with this. But I did indicate to Dallas that I think it is proper for these requests to be made from the airport board to the commissioners, and then Kelly subsequently would handle that. Is that how you perceive the whole process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's why Kelly was on here. I think typically it would be Dallas's name in this case coming to the board, and then we can deal with that. And I've had that discussion with Mr. Anderson.
Yeah,
So,
good.
further discussion about the transfer.
Certainly seems appropriate.
Okay, Chair would entertain a motion.
You get to do it.
Okay. It's an airport issue.
Okay, I'll move that we transfer the money.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to transfer $10,000 from the general fund to the airport fund. Further discussion? Thank you for your information too, that helps. Public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries. We will ask Ms. Kelly to make that transfer. Okay, sir, go ahead while we're on the airport stuff.
Okay, before anybody gets away, this is only for information at this point. Our regular meeting of the airport board is tomorrow, and we're going to delve into this thing. Simply put, the credit card reader at the airport as of June next year will not be supported by the manufacturer anymore.
How old is that?
That is
Roughly.
15 years.
Okay.
At least.
They're wanting us to buy a new credit card reader pedestal. I've contacted QT Pod by email. I haven't gotten a response back from them. Mr. Jolly called him on the phone, had to leave a message. He hasn't heard back from him either. So we don't know any numbers on the price of the new card reader, how much installation would be, the transportation costs. They are offering a rebate for the old unit salvage if we replace it by the 1st of September this year. So we've got a lot to look at tomorrow, and we've got to get numbers from the company before we can even ask the commission to take any action at all.
Must be a whiz banger. It says it's our newest and award-winning self-service fueling terminal. How can we turn that down?
As well as the old one has operated, I expect this one will be whiz bang. And with the proposed Jet A system that might be installed, this new card reader would be seamless in attaching that system.
Yeah, we're going to need to do something,
for
and
the card
that's a
reader
good thought
to
because
operate that system and charge.
we'd be able to leverage the investment that's going to be made on the Jet A anyway. So
Yeah.
this could be a
So-
win-win.
So this right now is just for your information of what's coming up, and as soon as we get some concrete information from them, Alan Butler will be bringing that to you.
Good. Thanks, Dan.
The current, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Nope.
I was just going to, just after today, I just wanted to make sure I got my head clear. You'll have, after the move today, you'll still have an additional $5,000 in the budget, the airport budget?
Yeah, there'll be 5,000 left over, still in the general fund that was budgeted to the airport fund.
It'll have to be transferred at some point.
We may not need it,
Right.
but if we do,
If we purchase this, we'll probably need to move it from somewhere,
well, yeah.
obviously.
And I have not a foggiest idea
Right.
of the price of that unit. It could be 6,000, it could be 12. The way electronics are nowadays, they're cheap to make, but when they get into a specialized area like medical and aircraft, the price goes up significantly. So,
The current machine we're using, is that the M3000?
yes.
So it would be eligible for a trade-in or a return. I see that they do indicate that they, current owners of the M3000 are eligible for a discount of $3,500 roughly off of the purchase
Yes,
price of a new one. So we know it's going to be more than $4,000
Absolutely, yeah.
without a doubt. So And then I guess as you guys move forward, I would ask that you consider shopping around a little. I don't know.
Well, in the industry, there is no other choice.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the thing.
And
They
that's,
got a monopoly
that's really
on
the
that.
key, because we do have a procedure of any expenditure, but if there's only one, there's only one. We don't have to put it out for bid if there's not more than one. So you're good.
Yeah. My next question, sir, if you don't mind, your current card reader, it's freestanding?
Yes.
And is it under any shelter?
No.
Would the airport board consider putting up a little house to keep this out of the elements, particularly that direct sunlight on that LCD panel?
Well, this new unit is a different configuration, and it is pretty well shielded from sunshine in its own right. These units are built to be
In the elements.
Freestanding and outside?
freestanding to withstand as much as hurricane conditions. They are totally watertight. There's not a speck of dust in the one that we have. They're airtight, watertight. They're built to be out in the elements.
I would assume there'd be consideration to install this oriented away from direct sunlight so that people could actually see that screen.
Well, there's a picture of the new one on the last page, and the screen on that thing is really recessed quite a ways.
Recessed, yep.
And it does have a kind of a hood built into it,
Good.
which should keep sunlight off of it pretty well.
Okay, well, thank you for the information. I'm sure we'll visit about that again.
Oh yeah, that is definitely coming up.
The only other thing I would add is we were working, how do we repair the screen so we can read it? And so that's something you'd want to consider not doing or doing, depending on what we do here.
Okay.
There's no point
Well,
spending money fixing this one up if
We
we're
Yeah.
going
did
to
do
replace it.
some work on
I'm
it.
glad you brought that up. With this circumstance coming along, there's no need to put money into the one
That's
we've
right.
got. I personally, I used a special cleaner that I used in my business in the past. It was a plastic thing, and I shined up the plastic cover
Good.
on that thing,
Made it better.
filled in the cracks and everything. You can read that thing now.
Good.
So I kind of put a little more life to it at no expense.
Okay, well,
Thanks. Yeah.
One last question, I'm sorry, I don't
Sure.
want to dwell on this, but the current card system reader we have, it's functioning acceptably?
Oh, yeah,
Our real issue really is ongoing maintenance. If we don't fix it now and it breaks down, we're stuck.
it was.
So we might as well
Right.
upgrade now.
If we don't, we'll have to replace it. There's no question.
Got it.
Whether it be this year or next year.
Okay.
because they quit manufacturing the M3000.
Right. They stopped manufacturing it last year, and most of their parts suppliers stopped supplying parts to them also.
Good.
Good, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate you guys coming down, too.
Ah, you're welcome.
Great.
Thanks for the...
Cross country to Wetmore.
You're entirely welcome, sir. Next item of business is the recording of the surcharge back to the county general fund of $385.13. Ms. Camper, the floor is yours.
Yes, I need to transfer that money from the recording surcharge fund to the county general fund. And the reason for that is, I learned at a recent conference that the surcharge fund, whenever somebody records a document, they pay a $1 surcharge, actually $3 surcharge fund. $2 goes to the state, $1 comes to us. And we set that dollar fund aside to be used towards recording stuff if I need to buy new equipment or anything like that. And that money is supposed to be in a fund separate all by itself, so that if they ever want to come audit it, they can audit that. It's always been in with the book restoration fund. So we separated that out and got them put in the right places. And in doing that, I discovered that $385.13 never got transferred. I want to say it was in 2016 when we bought when Chuck and I went in together and bought the big map machine. And so I'm transferring this to balance that fund.
What's the group's pleasure?
I move that we authorize the transfer of $385.13 from the recording surcharge to the county general.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to transfer $385.13 from recording surcharge back to county general fund. Further discussion? Hearing none, public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Next item of business is the intergovernmental agreement with Fremont County concerning our weed management program. I think, gentlemen, you have had an opportunity to look at that agreement. I know that initially we were sent the one dated May of 2017. I spoke with Ms. Brenda. If we were going to consider this, it needs to be a blank agreement. I believe subsequently she sent you a copy of that as well.
I don't know if I sent the blank, but I do have
Okay,
the printout of the blank. It's exactly the same, except none of the
information
dates
filled.
are filled in. So.
Did we forward that to you? Did you get that
And the
electronically?
signatures are blank.
I did.
Did you? Okay.
I've read it.
Yeah, the blank one. Okay. Yeah. So I would move that we approve the intergovernmental agreement with the County of Fremont and between the County of Custer.
I'll second it.
They moved and seconded to approve the intergovernmental agreement for weed control with Fremont County. Further discussion? Public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. I believe it requires or asks for just the chairman's signature, so with...
The other one had Kelly's.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the
Oh.
commissioners, whether we all three
Oh.
need to sign it or just the chairman, and it's
Yeah,
just the
that's
chairman.
all.
Kelly would attest to that as well,
Yeah.
so I will sign this one. We can handwrite the dates in, we're okay with that, I think. So today, being the 16th day of May,
Yeah, it looks good.
Kelly. Thank you. Our next agenda item was added, update on the fire ban. Group's pleasure.
Good morning. So I don't think I have to go into a lot of justification why, but I believe today's either 25 or 26th day into our 30-day fire ban as renewed so about a month ago. You heard Mr. Crispin talk about Forest Service going fire bans. Mr. Page told me that Paul probably hadn't seen his emails this morning, but they went into the district supervisor signed it, and Forest Service went into, for our district, the San Carlos district, went into fire restrictions this morning. So Forest Service is stage one. I received an email from Ty Webb from Bureau of Land Management, and they will be entering into stage one fire restrictions very soon for Custer County and Fremont and Werfenau and some areas around here. But the definition very soon for BLM. It could be October. I don't, very soon is different with different organizations. But I would anticipate within the next couple weeks there'll be restrictions as well. And so I respectfully request on behalf of Fire Chief Kit Shy and myself that we extend the Stage 2 fire ban for another 30 days.
Upon the expiration.
Yeah, 30 days from the expiration date of the current restrictions.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
At what point would you recommend going to stage 3?
So I don't know if you're familiar with stage 3, but so stage 3 is very hard to enforce because basically what it says is you can't drive an ATV, you can't drive a vehicle, anything off of any well-established roadway. So no 2 tracks, no. You can't take your ATV and go out and check, go hunting or do anything like that. You can't be off the roads. Obviously, for agricultural use, you can't restrict that. But any other recreational purposes, so no use of go up on the Rainbow Trail. Can't take your ATV up there. So hard to enforce.
Anticipate ever the conditions getting to the point?
Oh yeah.
I don't know how much worse it could
So
get.
in 2002, they did go to stage 3 fire restrictions, if I recall, because it was a big deal, because basically what you're doing is you're shutting down any public lands to anyone for any, I mean, you can barely go down and tie a fly on your line without causing friction that would somehow, I mean, it's very stringent, so unless we were going to be able to do it in conjunction with the Forest Service and the BLM so that we're all working towards the common denominator there, it'd be hard to do, Jay.
Thank you.
I would move that we instill another fire ban for a 30-day period upon the expiration of our current ban.
I'll second.
We moved and seconded to instill a fire ban upon the expiration of the current ban for another 30-day period. Further discussion? Public comment?
Yes,
Yes.
good idea.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We do take some heat over it, believe it or not. It's kind of wild.
And just a little discussion there, and it's always, in case it starts raining cats and dogs, we can pull it off.
That's right.
Yeah,
I
commissioners
just want to make
have
sure
the-
everybody knows it's not 30 days.
we can lift it.
Yep.
If
When
conditions.
that means something, let us know.
Yeah, I will. I think you'll know, you'll be getting your arc now.
We'll proceed to vote. All in
Wait,
favor, say. Yes, ma'am.
You did the previous 2 by resolution. Do
Yeah,
you
this
need
needs
to
to
make
be
a
another
motion for resolution?
So I will restate my motion to include the word adopt the resolution instilling a fire ban. Second,
Earning your
okay with
pay,
that?
Kelly.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I would ask Ms. Brenda to prepare said resolution.
That's Clint's job.
Clint.
Can't you just take the last one and change the date?
Yes, I can.
It's not in your, it's not in your pay grade or whatever.
Yeah, I know, it's above my pay grade.
Yeah.
We can change that pay grade
I'll get you
down.
back for mine.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Next item of business, public comment? Yes,
So
sir.
I have one up. So
You're not public. You're the sheriff.
Sitting on that side.
Yeah, you're the sheriff. Come.
So we had discussion before, I mean, and seeing the document go out for in the workshop that we had to modify the burn ordinance and the fire restrictions and that language within that. And Cindy Howard and I were talking yesterday, and I encouraged her to send out a deadline because as of yesterday, I was the only one that had gone in and started to do some changes, but the way the document was shared, it wasn't showing my changes and my comments, it was just making wholesale changes to it, and so I stopped because it took time with technology, and we're still figuring that out, or at least some people are figuring that out. I'm not sure I am, but so she's going to try to really push, encourage, so that we can get that going, so that we can get that burn ordinance modified and make it a little more specific and user-friendly from some different angles. So you can expect that email to be coming out soon, and I guess Cindy has now got the settings to where when we make changes, it does all the cute stuff and shows our notes on the side instead of just changing the document. But I wanted you to be aware of that I'm encouraging her, because I'm as guilty as the next person, that if I don't have a deadline, then it's easier to, you can move it aside because you've got other pressing issues. So, like meetings.
Yeah, I tried to put a change on that document. I was in over my head real quick. So.
And we may need to have, even if it's a 30-minute workshop, where she can come in and say, look, this is how you do it. I mean, that might be, or maybe we can just get together with Brenda, because I know Brenda's more tech savvy in one finger than I am, period. So she can show us her.
Okay. Good, thanks for bringing that
Not
up.
to fall and told you, Brenda, but I'm sure that might be an option.
Well, the thing
If you're
is,
amicable to that.
Sure.
she has a desk. We don't.
You have a whole room.
True. Further comment from the public? Anything else, gentlemen? If I may, Commissioner Prince, I would just like to follow up on a private conversation you and I had earlier. You can just say no, stop me real quick. But Commissioner Prince shared with me that his son took a fall yesterday.
It actually happened 2 days.
2 days.
Surgery.
Surgery was yesterday, so I just want to extend our heartfelt prayers for your son's recovery. Shattered his elbow and went through surgery, and I hope you don't mind me sharing that. But your concern is our concern. So pass that on to him if and when you see him the next day or so. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Anything else come before the good of the order? Hearing none, I will declare the meeting, the chair will declare the meeting adjourned.
It's too early.
It is a little early.